What I want to do today is to explain to you very, very simply what programmable central bank digital currencies are and why I think they're on the way, and what arguments you can use with other people to try to explain to them what the dangers are and why they should resist. To get what's going on, you need to understand the current monetary system, which is the physical cash that's not worth the paper that it's not printed on anymore. And then you've also got credit money. So banks like HSBC are able to lend money into existence. So for example, you might take a student, they go and get a new credit card. So what HSBC does then is just credit that student's account with digital money. They go onto their account, type in what they've borrowed, that appears in the student's bank account, and then they can then spend the money using a card. So what's the problem? First off is that the government has been asking the Bank of England to print, to create too much cash to finance welfare spending, furlough, bounce back loans, and that's causing massive inflation. So when you see the prices of stuff going up in the shops, it's not really the prices that are rising. It's what's really happening is that the purchasing power of each unit of currency is dropping as more of it is being created by the central banks. The second problem is about the credit aspect of the money supply. So if commercial banks are able to lend money into existence, what they create then is private sector debt. So over the last 30, 40 years, household debts have increased massively. Corporate debt, a lot of businesses have got too much debt. And then of course you've got government debt on top of that. So debts that are too big to be repaid won't be repaid. And what we're beginning to see now is cracks appearing in the financial system, because when debts go unpaid, the lenders make losses, and those losses cause the lenders to go bust. And that's basically what happened in 2008. That was the underlying cause of the financial crisis. Too many people had borrowed too much money, they couldn't repay, the banks suffered massive losses, and without bank bailouts they would have gone bust. What's happened since then is we didn't learn the lesson. What happened instead was that interest rates were cut so that households and firms could embark on another round of borrowing and spending. And it was just putting off the fateful day when the financial system was going to collapse again. And we're more or less at that point again where financial collapse is imminent. So the globalists, or maybe you could call them the powers that shouldn't be, are urgently in need of a replacement form of money. And the replacement that they've got in mind is something called central bank programmable digital currencies. So what will that mean? Well, first off, it will mean the end of physical cash. Money in the future will be only in a digital format. The second big change will be that in the future, with a CBDC, private banks won't be able to create money in a credit format, because in the future, if somebody like me wants credit, they'll have to approach the central bank in their country. They'll have an account with that central bank and they'll negotiate credit directly with the central bank, aka government. So I know this sounds a bit mad, but it's exactly what happened under communism and fascism, where the government controlled the access to credit. So under this new system, you'll have a digital wallet opened up for you at the central bank, and I'm guessing that it will be linked to your mobile phone. There'll be an app on your mobile phone, and that app will also incorporate other things, maybe like what they've got in China already, which is a social credit score. And I think also they'll link it to a carbon credit score too. So what most people don't realise is just how important the end of physical cash will be. So at the moment, I could take these €4 and go down to the shop, and maybe I could buy some healthy salad, or, some fresh tomatoes. Healthy stuff, I could buy some of that. Or I could buy this imported octopus, which isn't very environmentally friendly, but it's pretty nice to eat. I like it. Or I could buy something naughty, like this ready mixed gin with ginger and a hint of mint. Or maybe I could buy some locally produced beers. Or maybe I could buy this kombucha, Arctic berry kombucha. Ultimately, it's my choice, and whatever I choose to do, the government has no idea whatsoever about what I chose to spend my €4 on. That would be an entirely private matter as it stands. So I know there'll be some complacent people out there who still trust the government, who still think that the government is always on their side, and they'll be saying, oh yeah, but like if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear, like why are you so bothered about the government knowing what you're spending your money on? And what I would say to those people is they need to wake up and recognise two things. First of all, that the government isn't always on their side. And the second thing that I would say is they should be wary about the amount of power that a programmable central bank digital currency would give to somebody who maybe was democratically elected, but maybe like Adolf Hitler. I don't know how many people know this, but yes, he was democratically elected. Once in power, to actually use the power of the state to create something that definitely isn't in the general public's interest. So what I'm going to do now is just explain to you some examples of the type of power that a politician might want to wield over you guys via a programmable central bank digital currency. So first thing to say is that with the CBDC, it will work through an app. Your access to your central bank digital cash will be through a digital wallet enabled through a mobile phone app. That's what I think they're going to do initially. So what's the problem with that? Well, let's take the example of the government would then know exactly what things you've bought. So, they could say, politicians, they might believe in man-made climate change. They might just simply believe in finite non-renewable resources. And rather than just ordinary people consuming those, they might want to conserve some for their kids, the future generations of the powers that shouldn't be. So if you think about things like, maybe you like eating meat, maybe you like having your central heating on, maybe you like flying to other countries, maybe you like having a car for convenience. All of those things emit carbon, don't they? So when you purchase those things on here, your carbon credit score will go down, and that might trigger a block on your central bank digital currency. So you might go to the checkout and you might want to buy some meat, and it will say transaction declined because you don't have enough carbon points, because you've already used them all up, maybe because you refilled your car with petrol or diesel that week. So my question to you is, are you willing to, do you want to live in that type of world where the government is the government is acting like your mum and telling you, Uncle Duncan gives you some cash, but your mum tells you what she puts it in her wallet and she tells you what you can and can't spend it on. So do you actually want to live in that type of world? Something that I thought about is that it's almost like living inside a computer game, where, maybe for some things, if you buy bugs, maybe your carbon credit score on your phone, maybe you get more points. Do you want to live in that type of world where the government is just allowed to manipulate your behaviour? I really hope not, because from my perspective, I just see this as being an issue of self-respect. That each of us, as you know, I'm a Christian, so I believe that God created us with free will, and that's super, super important. And no one should be allowed to take that free will away from us, especially power-hungry politicians. They might claim that they're going to use their power for the greater social good, but what's to stop them from using the power that they've seized to benefit themselves, not you. So, you know, if you think about COP20 and just look at how they get there, you know, and also look at the menu, they're not eating crickets, they're eating finest filet. Another thing that you could do with a programmable central bank digital currency is that at a flick of a computer switch, the government / central bank could shut down an entire market. You know, so they could say, well, we've got a climate emergency, no petrol, or you could ration petrol more aggressively than you're currently doing. So do you actually want to live in that world? You could also use a central bank digital currency to apply a negative interest rate. So at the moment, you know, with paper money, if they try to impose a negative interest rate on me, what that might mean would be, suppose I've got £100 in the bank and you have a negative interest rate of 5%. At the end of the year, I'd have £95. At the moment, I can easily evade that negative interest rate by going to the bank and taking out physical cash, because they can't apply this negative rate to physical cash because I can take it out of the banking system. With a programmable central bank digital currency, they could reduce the spending power of central bank digital money on your phone by whatever they wanted, at whatever speed they wanted. You know, under the guise of sort of Keynesian economics, we're in a recession, so for the greater social good, unless you spend, I don't know, £200 by insert a date of the politician's choice, we're going to reduce the amount in your central bank digital wallet by X%. They would have total control over your money. You would cease to be a sovereign individual and become just a complete slave of the system. Another thing that you could do with a CBDC is to put limits, program limits into it in terms of where people are allowed to spend their money. So if you think back to the lockdowns, you know, it was mysterious, wasn't it, that big shops were allowed to stay open, but small shops had to close. With a CBDC, you could stop people from spending their money in places, stores, maybe that people, the government disapproved of. So I don't know, think back to, again, March 2020. And I think it was Wetherspoons initially, they told the government that they weren't going to close their pubs. Well, in the future, what you could do is the state could punish Wetherspoons and basically stop people from spending their central bank digital currency units at Wetherspoons by just programming that currency to prevent a transfer from your CBDC digital wallet to Wetherspoons CBDC digital wallet. Because with the CBDC, the state would be the only bank playing, the only bank available for everybody, firms and individuals. So you'd only be allowed to spend your money in approved retail outlets. And that would give the government a hell of a lot of power. You could also apply limits to when people are allowed to engage in transactions. So in Britain at the moment, they have licensing laws in pubs. You wouldn't need those laws at all, because again, what you could just simply do with a programmable CBDC is to prevent any transactions taking place between individuals and pubs after, I don't know, 8 p.m. If you wanted to make it 8:30, that would be very, very easy to just like make that reprogramming change. Complete power, as I say, for these the government and their central planners at the places like the Bank of England. So, yeah, some of you are probably thinking, well, people would just say no to that, wouldn't they? You know, they would say no to this tyranny. And in answer to that, I would say, I hope you're right. But there is one other thing that you should be aware of with the central bank digital currency, which is that, you know, if you criticize the government, you attend maybe a demonstration that's not authorized. You know, in the future, of course, there would be still demonstrations and there would still be free speech. But You'd only be able to demonstrate and speak about things that the government agreed with you on. And if you were a dissenter, then it would be very easy for you to be just denied access to your CBDC credits. You could be just switched off remotely, and that's you put in a digital gulag, leaving you and your family to starve. Now, I think they would, even with that, I think there would still be massive pushback, because what happened with the old Divok and the Britney Spears was that, even in Austria and Germany, where they were threatening people with prison if they didn't go to the concerts, a hardcore of 30% still said no. So they would still have a problem, a massive problem. And you could also argue that so far, it's been a relatively easy task for the globalists, in the sense that asking people to wear a slave muzzle in return for furlough, bounce back loans, working from home, eat out to help out, etc. It was quite an easy sell for the globalists. I think CBDCs will be a much harder sell, especially if it's accompanied with a massive seizure of private assets, under Klaus's "you'll own nothing and be happy." I think there'll be a lot more resistance. It was 30% last time. I think it will be more like 50, 60% this time. Because I guess once people, it's another Gerald Salentism, he says, when people lose everything and have got nothing left to lose, they lose it. So I don't think in the long term they'll be able to do this CBDC. And as I said in a previous video, they really needed the Nazi passports to get the digital IDs in place, because you can't have a CBDC until you've got digital IDs in place first. So, it's not, there's plenty of hope as far as I'm concerned, but the reason why I'm doing this video is to alert people, because, the faster we can get people's awareness up, the more rigorously we can just say, no, we're not accepting this. And, we then would still need another new currency, because the ones that we've currently got are just being inflated into oblivion. So we're going to need a new currency system. And the faster we kind of just basically tell the globalists we're not accepting this, the sooner it will be that we start developing something else. And it might well be that we go back to, physical cash made of precious metals. That would work. Or maybe some sort of a gold standard where you've got pieces of paper backed up by precious metals held in reserve by central banks. Or it could be competing private cryptocurrencies where, unlike a CBDC, you've got complete anonymity. Either of those things would work. So again, I'm very hopeful about the future, but what we just need to do is push back very aggressively when they try, or if they try these CBDCs out. The other thing that I'd say as well is that there's references in the Bible to all of this, because I think if they do launch CBDCs and people are dumb enough to accept it, initially it will be launched via a mobile phone app. But, the problem with mobile phones is that they run out of batteries. So what I think will happen is that they'll incorporate a chip, some sort of wearable technology, some nanotech. This might sound like James Bond. In fact, I can't remember what James Bond film it was now, but they talked about smart blood and stuff like that. And actually in Sweden, there are already people who've been chipped, and, they can pay for things via this chip and open doors with it. And, real dumbos have accepted that because it's like so convenient. Anyway, what this really is signposting for me is something that's in the book of Revelation. So I'll give you some quotes to that. So this is from Revelation chapter 13, and it starts verse 16, and it says, and he, note the lowercase h there, so he's talking about Satan, who basically gets to rule over the earth for 7 years during this tribulation period. It says, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads." Now, this is where I think this link to CBDCs comes in. I can see them trying to incorporate CBDCs into some sort of nanotech that gets inserted into either your right hand or your forehead. And it continues, verse 17, "And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name." So obviously, with a CBDC, there's no cash. So in that system, you would only be able to buy or sell if you actually had the CBDC wearable nanotech inserted somewhere into your body, either in your right hand or your forehead. And then verse 18, "Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and the number is 666. So, the old 666 thing. So if you actually look at some company logos, you can see, like Google, the logo for that, you can see 3 sixes there pretty clearly. You can also see 3 sixes in the World Economic Forum's logo. So these people, they are Satanists. Make no doubt about that. Have no doubt about that. So if we move into chapter 14, verse 9, it says, "And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone," in other words, you'll go to hell, "in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb of God." So basically, whatever you do not accept this mark of the beast. They talk about Black Lives Matter. What I would say is eternal lives matter. Don't fear people who can kill you. Even if you end up starving to death, that's still a much better bet, because we all die anyway, and what matters is the final destination of our soul. And I certainly don't want anybody watching this video to end up in hell because they took the mark of the beast because they wanted to go and buy something from Tesco. Verse 16 is also interesting too, and it says, chapter 16, verse 2. And it says, "And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon men who had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image." So, just turn the camera around. What that suggests to me is maybe in the future they might incorporate the mark of the beast with some sort of medical procedure, perhaps, some sort of mark that also perhaps delivers some substance into your body that's maybe mandated in the future. So that's all I want to say today. And as I say, like, the main thing here, I think, is for you to try to communicate this information to other people, to wake them up, because I think there's a hell of a lot of complacency out there, that people think, oh, my privacy doesn't matter. What does it matter if the government knows everything about me? It does matter. So, God bless.